Were you eating pizza? Were you eating pizza?
No, I wasn't eating it. No, I wasn't eating it.
What were you eating? What were you eating?
I was eating a hamburger. I was eating a hamburger.
How many hamburgers were you eating? How many hamburgers were you eating?
I was eating one hamburger. I was eating one hamburger.
Where were you eating? Where were you eating?
I was eating here. I was eating here. Were your parents eating with their friends? Were your parents eating with their friends?
No, they weren't eating with them. No, they weren't eating with them.
Where were they eating? Where were they eating?
They were eating at my brother's house. They were eating at my brother's house.
Was your sister eating with them? Was your sister eating with them?
No, she wasn't eating with them. No, she wasn't eating with them.
Where was she eating? Where was she eating?
She was eating at her mother-in-law's house. She was eating at her mother-in-law's house.
Were you drinking beer? Were you drinking beer?
No, I wasn't drinking it. No, I wasn't drinking it.
What were you drinking? What were you drinking?
I was drinking juice. I was drinking juice.
What kind of juice were you drinking? What kind of juice were you drinking?
I was drinking orange juice. I was drinking orange juice.
Were you reading? Were you reading?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was.
Were you reading math? Were you reading math?
No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't.
What were you reading? What were you reading?
I was reading science. I was reading science.
Was your girlfriend reading? Was your girlfriend reading?
Yes, she was. Yes, she was.
Where was she reading? Where was she reading?
She was reading at the library. She was reading in the library.
What was she reading? What was she reading?
She was reading English. She was reading English.
Were your kids reading at the university? Were your kids reading at the university?
No, they weren't. No, they weren't.
Where were they reading? Where were they reading?
They were reading somewhere else. They were reading somewhere else.
Were you studying? Were you studying?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was.
Were you studying history? Were you studying history?
No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't.
What were you studying? What were you studying?
I was studying the law. I was studying the law.
Who were you studying with? Who were you studying with?
I was studying alone. I was studying by myself. Was she studying? Yes, she was studying. Yes, she was studying. What was she studying? What was she studying? She was studying politics. She was studying politics. What were they studying?
They were studying chemistry. They were studying chemistry.
Where were they studying? Where were they studying?
They were studying in the lab. They were studying at the lab. Were you working? Were you working?
Yes, I was working. Yes, I was working.
What time were you working? What time were you working?
I was working 5 minutes ago. I was working 5 minutes ago.
How long were you working? How long were you working?
I was working for 8 hours. I was working for 8 hours.
Where were you working? Where were you working?
I was working in the field. I was working in the field. Was he working today? Was he working today?
Yes, he was working. Yes, he was working.
Where was he working? Where was he working?
He was working in the hospital. He was working in the hospital.
Were they working? Were they working?
Yes, they were. Yes, they were.
Where were they working? Where were they working?
They were working outside. They were working outside. Were you buying me cookies? Were you buying me cookies?
No, I wasn't buying you cookies. No, I wasn't buying you cookies.
What were you buying me? What were you buying me?
I wasn't buying you anything. I wasn't buying you anything.
Why weren't you buying me anything? Why weren't you buying me anything?
I wasn't buying you anything because you're spoiled. Was Dad buying a house? Was Dad buying a house?
No, he wasn't buying a house. No, he wasn't buying a house.
What was he buying? What was he buying?
He was buying a car. He was buying a car.
What kind of car was he buying? What kind of car was he buying?
He was buying a used car. He was buying a used car.
Were Sam and Sarah buying a house? Were Sam and Sarah buying a house?
Yes, they were. Yes, they were.
Where were they buying it? Where were they buying it?
They were buying it here. They were buying it here. Were you going to the party? Were you going to the party?
No, I wasn't going to the party. No, I wasn't going to the party.
Where were you going? Where were you going?
I was going to the store. I was going to the store.
Why were you going to the store? Why were you going to the store?
I was going to the store to buy something. I was going to the store to buy something. Was she going to the party? Was she going to the party?
Yes, she was going to the party. Yes, she was going to the party.
Where was he going? Where was he going? He was going to the bank. Why was he going to the bank? Why was he going to the bank?
He was going to the bank to get some money. He was going to the bank to get some money.
Were they going to the park? Were they going to the park?
No, they weren't going to the park. No, they weren't going to the park.
Where were they going? Where were they going?
They were going to work. They were going to work.
Were you taking medicine? Were you taking medicine? Yes, I was. Yes, I was. What kind of medicine were you taking? What kind of medicine were you taking? I was taking medicine for my headache. I was taking medicine for my headache. How many pills were you taking? How many pills were you taking? I was taking one pill. I was taking one pill.
Were you guys taking a picture? Were you guys taking a picture?
Yes, we were taking a picture. Yes, we were taking a picture. Were they taking a taxi? Were they taking a taxi?
No, they weren't taking a taxi. No, they weren't taking a taxi.
What were they taking? What were they taking?
They were taking a train.
Was she taking a French class? Was she taking a French class? No, she wasn't taking a French class. No, she wasn't taking a French class. What was she taking? What was she taking?
What class was she taking? What class was she taking? She was taking a German class. She was taking a German class.
Where was she taking it? Where was she taking it?
She was taking it in high school. She was taking it in high school.
Were you playing soccer? Were you playing soccer?
No, I wasn't playing soccer. No, I wasn't playing soccer.
What were you playing? What were you playing?
I was playing football. I was playing football.
Who were you playing with? Who were you playing with?
I was playing with my friends.
Where were you playing? Where were you playing?
I was playing here. I was playing here.
How long were you playing? How long were you playing?
I was playing for 3 hours. I was playing for 3 hours.
Was she playing volleyball? Was she playing volleyball?
No, she wasn't playing volleyball. No, she wasn't playing volleyball.
What was she playing? What was she playing?
She was playing basketball. She was playing basketball.
Were they playing today? Were they playing today?
Yes, they were playing today. Yes, they were playing today.
What time were they playing? What time were they playing?
They were playing at 6. They were playing at 6 o'clock.
I was feeling bad yesterday.
Last Friday, were you teaching in your classroom?
No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't. I wasn't teaching in my classroom. Where were you teaching? I was teaching in the computer room. I was teaching in the computer room. Why were you teaching there? Why were you teaching there? I was teaching there because it's required. I was teaching there because it's required. What were you teaching? I was teaching how to type. I was teaching how to type.
What were you doing?
What were you doing?
I was drinking a milkshake. I told you. Were they drinking soda? No, they weren't drinking soda. What were they drinking? They were drinking hot chocolate.
Were you living with your brother last year? Were you living with your brother last year?
No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't living with my brother last year.
Where were you living? Where were you living?
I was living with my parents. I was living with my parents.